Welcome to BloomLiving. I am your host, Thomas DeSchutter, former rock musician turned financial strategist, sharing amazing ideas from amazing people looking to up the game of life whenever we can. Welcome to today's show, season 3. Great guest coming up today. Thom King from Staviva down in Portland, Oregon is going to be joining us. He's got a great story to share. He's an entrepreneur, and I know we're going to have a great conversation. Before we jump into that, of course, I've got some thoughts I want to share. And off the top, I just want to get back to something I touched a little bit on last week, some of my money principles. And today is, let's talk about focus fuels finance. Focus fuels finance. So what do I mean by focus fuels finance? There's a couple of things. There's a few different ways we can look at this. Is one, of course, the obvious is when we focus on the numbers, when we focus on the data, what is that telling us? What are we finding out when we do that? And also, as we bring our awareness to focusing on the data, on the money, and what I mean by that is the money coming into our personal economy and the money going out of our personal economy. When we start to focus on that, we can begin to tune into, are we excited about where our money is going? Because don't forget, what we touched on last week was that money is life energy. When we're going out on a daily basis, and that's for most of us out there, me included, we go out on a daily basis, we do some work. Either we love our work or we don't love our work. Hopefully we love our work. And when you go out and you spend that time, yes, it's something you enjoy doing, but it's also taking you away from maybe other things you also enjoy doing. And in a large sense, it's actually giving you the ability to do those other things, because most things in our world today cost money. No matter what it is you want to do, there's an element of money involved. And so we go out, we have careers, we do jobs, we do things in order to bring in the capital in order for us to do the things that we want to do in life. And if everything's really wonderful, the work we're doing is also one of those things. So we have this idea that money fuels our life. It is part of our life energy. And so when we focus on it, it's not being obsessed with it. It's understanding, where is our money going? How is the amount coming in? How is that affecting us? What are we earning on a regular basis? Where are we spending our money? And this is the type of stuff you want to dig into off the top, is you want to get an understanding of the money picture. As soon as you're going to start looking at, hey, I want to improve my current financial situation. I want to build more wealth in my life. I want to have some security. Hey, I want to be financially independent and retire early. If that's your goal, if you're part of the FIRE movement, it all starts with getting very clear on the money flow and focusing on what does that look like. And I'll take that a little step further, even aligning that with your values. I'm doing that kind of work. Is the stuff I'm doing really lining up with what lights me up in life and the values that I have? Getting back to the focus part, though, I put in my book a number, the Bloom Your Money, Your Life book. I had talked about something that's completely relevant to the focus part. And here's what I looked at is I thought, okay, well, let's say we're going to go into debt, and most things in our society financially are predicated on debt. Well, let's say we go into debt. So here's my example. You buy a $35,000 automobile, you get a 5-year loan at 5% interest. Your cost of borrowing is going to be about $4,600. So that car now costs you $39,629. And now if you're making, if you figured out that your average wage is, let's say it's $65 an hour, and I don't know if that's high or low or the medium, but let's say it's $65 an hour. In order for you to pay for that automobile, you're going to have to commit 610 hours of your future solely just to pay for that debt. Now, it's not good or bad. It's just that is what the focus is all about. It's understanding that by taking on this loan, and it might be the right thing to do, but taking on this loan, I'm now committing 610 hours just to the work effort of paying off that automobile. That equates to like 25.41 days. So imagine that the next 25 call it 25 and a half days of your life, the next 25 and a half days of your life, you're going to do nothing for 24 hours a day except work to pay off that loan. And that's how, that's one way you want to start looking at debt, because then the question comes up, is this something that I really want to do? Is this really where I want to be investing my time and energy, my life energy, if you will, in paying for that future expense? And it might not be, and it might be, and that's fine. The idea is that when we focus, when we ask ourselves those deeper questions, when we take a look at the data, then we can make a real concrete decision based on facts. And you can ask yourself that question. Am I so excited about this that I'm willing to do that? Because it's really easy to get the loan. It's really easy to use a credit card. It's really easy to access the money that we haven't quite made yet. It's been made very simple in this world in order to do that. What we're not looking at maybe, or what we're not focusing on, is what does it mean to me going forward? How is that actually going to affect my life? Truth be known, what am I committing to? What am I actually signing up for? And, I can speak from my own personal experience. I haven't done that in the past. There was a time in my life where I did not do that. I just spent money without any consideration of what that means going forward, because it's just natural to think, oh, I'll just go to work and pay for it, right? Well, is that really what I want to do? Is there something better I'd rather do? Maybe what I want to do is work towards getting money to put into things that are going to pay me more money. Maybe that would be a better thing to do. I don't know. It's possible that that might excite me more if I start to focus on what I truly want. And maybe that car isn't what I truly want. Maybe what I really want is to not have to go to this job every day of the week. Maybe I want to pull it back to maybe 2 or 3 days a week. And how do I do that? By building up things that will also pay me more money. So that's my tip for the day on one of my money principles, and it's focus fuels finance. And I can't encourage you enough to do this kind of work. I can't encourage you enough to start digging into your finances, because at the end of the day, nobody else is going to do it for you. Nobody's going to look after you later in life. You kind of need to take responsibility for yourself. Now, today's guest, I'm super excited to welcome to the show today's guest, Thom King from Portland, Oregon. I'm going to jump into his bio in a moment. Thank you. So welcome to the BloomLiving podcast. Today, I have a very special guest. I'm honored to be with Thom King. Here's his bio: part CEO, part personal development wonk, I love that, and part biohacker info geek. King is a self-confessed serial entrepreneur. While his favorite book list contains many success-oriented and personal development classics, the classic definition of achieving success, example, making a lot of money, is not what inspires or motivates King. He follows more of a "you aren't doing well unless you're also doing some good" line of thinking. King's company has been built around the simple principle of do the right thing. In 1999, Thom's personal passion for food and his concern over the explosion of metabolic disease led him to found Steviva Brands, now known as Icon Foods, with a mission to help food manufacturers replace unhealthy sugars in their products with natural options. With 20 years of R&D work, Thom has helped hundreds of manufacturers improve the quality of their products. In recent years, his passion for food and optimal health have intersected with his embrace of a ketogenic, low-carb, high-fat diet. Founded in 1999, Steviva Brands, Inc. is one of the largest importers, manufacturers, and distributors of clean label sweetening systems and natural sweeteners. Thom, thank you for joining me, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Thomas. That was a hell of a introduction. I'm gonna have to live up to that.
I have no doubt. Just based on I did a post on this on my Instagram. Just based on the package you sent me for being on the show in prep for the show blew my mind. I've never, I've had a lot of guests on. Nobody has gone to that length of sharing so much stuff with me about what's going on that it made me really excited to have you here today. So again, welcome. I started reading your book, and so here's where I kind of want to start where it all started, because I was really taken by the idea that you had already discovered this natural sweetener, and it
Mm,
inspired you to start a business.
mhm.
You want to talk a little bit about like what that journey was? Were you a Did you have businesses prior to this, or was this just like, hey, I'm inspired, I want to do this?
Well, I'm a fifth generation entrepreneur, so that influenced me quite a bit. And yes, I had businesses before this. My first business was actually uh, a company where I served legal papers and repoed cars, and that's how I made my way through school. So that dark past. And then I, eventually moved to LA and got into the entertainment industry and founded a couple record labels and a film production company and a TV production company. And ultimately, I sold those because I didn't feel like I was making a real contribution. It just felt like a lot of glamour. So I moved to Portland, Oregon, and here I really found my base. Like I was able to focus on what it was that brought out my greatest sense of aliveness, and that was being involved in something that was bigger than me, like making a contribution to you know to making a dent in metabolic disease, and maybe helping people improve the quality of their life.
Wow. Did you have any prior experience in disease research or any of that line, or is this just something that you just like, hey, I want to do this, and now the journey begins?
No, I mean my background is marketing and real estate and intellectual property law. So I never had really any experience short of taking biology classes. I never had really any experience in health and nutrition. So I would say that, I'm fairly autodidactic when it comes to, my trade. Like I literally just cracked open books and became a sponge for knowledge. Like I needed to learn everything that I possibly could about the human body and how it functions and the Krebs cycle and how our body can burn various types of fuels and how health and nutrition sort of weave into the fabric of our well-being. So it was 100% self-taught, which is kind of curious to me because, when I look at the things that I learned in college, do I really use them? I mean, not nearly as much as the stuff that I learned after I got out of school, where I found a real passion to drink in as much knowledge as I possibly could.
Right. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of entrepreneurs that I've spoken with over the years. It's like, the college gave me, I guess, a certain maybe some tools to stand on a little bit,
Mm,
but really it's not what ended up driving their decision making going forward. So I'm
mhm,
curious.
mhm,
You mentioned in your book the sweetener. So
mhm.
when you came across stevia, did you immediately start the business, or is this when you started the data of figuring it out and then launch the business? I'm curious about which came first.
Um, well, the way that I was introduced to stevia was through a gentleman whose name is Jim May, and he was really considered the father of bringing stevia into the U.S. And he was an explorer, and he would go to these foreign countries, and he'd find a variety of different herbs. And I ran into him while living in Phoenix, Arizona, and he said, hey, you should try some of these leaves. And he had these crushed up leaves. It was more like a paste in a little jar, and I'm like, all right, I'll try it. And so I tried it, and I was really blown away by how sweet it was. Like it had a lot of sort of bitter off notes and herb flavor profile to it, um, but it was super sweet, and it probably in its natural state 25 times sweeter than sugar. And that's when the proverbial light bulb went off, and I was like, oh, I'm like, if I could find a way to get these sweet constituents out of these leaves, this could be like the natural version of aspartame. And at the time, aspartame was the sort of the go-to sweetener in the soft drink industry. So um yeah, at that point I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. Flash forward 8 years later and almost $1 million. I was able to with the help of chemists and stuff like that, come up with a process that was able to extract the sweet stevioglycosides from the leaves using a natural water extraction process. And at that point, then that was sort of the genesis of the business. But it didn't, we still had like a big wall in front of us, and that was the FDA, because the FDA hadn't approved stevia to be used as a sweetener. It could only be used as a dietary supplement. So that sort of sequestered us to, health food stores and things like that. But one of our competitors, Cargill, a multi-billion-dollar company, had the deep pockets to be able to lobby the FDA. And in 2008, the FDA sort of paved the way for consumer product companies to be able to use stevia as a sweetener. And that's when our business really started to take off.
Right. So I think I read in the book 1999 is kind of when you started the business. So you were
Yep.
just on the outskirts, getting into health food stores, that kind of thing. It
Right.
was low key.
Yeah.
Then the FDA says, "Hey, you're awesome. We love you." And at that point, you're able to step forward and deliver it on a much bigger scale.
Yeah, I mean that is definitely, sort of an encapsulation of what happened. But it was a journey. Like that time between 1999 and 2008, the company was my side hustle. And the way that I kept it going is by having a job. And I used to work for a Fortune 100 company. So, every penny that I would get, I would just save or put it into developing the business. So it was a long road, but once it, I wouldn't say that the FDA said that they loved us, but I think that the FDA, I think it was more like, okay, we'll tolerate you. So I would say that that's more accurate.
So this is awesome. Thank you. What are you in terms of, so employees today? Where are you at versus where you were prior, like when you were as a side hustle?
Oh, good question. Well, I didn't have any employees when it was a side hustle. It was basically me and people that I would pay as subcontractors. And most of the subcontractors that I worked with were, were chemists and biologists. And now today, I mean, we run a super lean company, just because we have a lot of things that are automated and, and we're super efficient. So now we have 30 employees. And we went from, I think, like a 500 square foot little thing that I called the garoffice, into 58,000 square feet of warehouse and production areas. So the company has grown immensely, as the market for for natural, sugar-free, keto-friendly products has.
Right. And I assume this is no longer your side hustle.
No, this is my job, and it's interesting because it really, I still have that sort of entrepreneurial bent. And so I mean, Icon Foods is our food ingredient company, and I mean, I feel super grateful to to be as successful as I've been with it. But I still feel that yearning, like I feel that yearning to create and to be an entrepreneur. So I'm not 100% convinced that I'm a very good CEO. I get compliments, which is great, but I really think that I'm a good entrepreneur, far better entrepreneur than a CEO. And I'm always looking at ways to create, to create more value and create things that bring out my sense of aliveness. And probably my latest endeavor was the book that I wrote, Guy Gone Keto, and that Guy Gone Keto line of products. It hugely satisfying. It's not a money maker. In fact, I'd say just the opposite. It's a money loser, but the payoff is so huge. Like, when I go to events, like keto supported events or anything where there's people that have had the product, the stories that I hear and how the book influenced people is immensely more satisfying, than making money. I mean, making money is great because it can afford you a certain level of freedom. It affords you nice things, but it doesn't really give you that internal satisfaction. Like, I mean, the things that really spark my internal satisfaction are are really having a positive impact on people's lives. my employees. Like I've had employees that have come in at entry level and now they're in director roles. And for me, watching and being able to be the catalyst for those people to just burn, um, it's really exciting and super satisfying, as well as like going to to a trade show or some sort of a function and having somebody run up to me and wrap their arms around me and say, "Oh my God, you totally changed my life." That is moving. Like I've run into situations like that have really brought me to tears when somebody comes to me with a level of gratitude like that. So yeah, it's a mixed bag of mostly good.
Yeah. Prior to my career in finance, I was a musician,
Oh,
and I played. We made a couple of records, and we played original music. And I starved for my art, really. Living on the road on $5 a day, and
yeah,
never really caring about that, though, because it wasn't about that. It was
right.
about exactly what you shared. Someone coming up after a
Hmm.
gig, going, "Oh man, you guys, like, your heart and soul, I just love what you're doing, or your drumming was so great." Like, that's what was way more important to me
Hmm.
than the paycheck at the end of it.
Yeah.
So so I'm curious about this 20-year journey, because for people that want to jump into a successful business,
Hmm.
a lot of times what I see in the 2 decades I've been working on finances with people is that the patience isn't there sometimes. And what can you share in terms of what it's taken you to keep kind of going along and keep inventing yourself or reinventing yourself if you needed to, in order to build and stay with it?
That is an excellent question. And I would say that my greatest tool is writing it down. I like to call it think it, then ink it. So I'm a daily journaler. So I don't start my day until I like actually, written in my journal. And my journal morphs into a variety of different forms, but mostly what it is, it's like, how am I feeling, and what am I willing to let go of today that's holding me back? That's a big one for me, and I really like to dwell on the things that I need to let go of, because you cling to stuff that's just nonsensical. It's like a fear of what other people think about you. And it's like carrying that around is like, you're constantly adjusting, and it's like, okay, what are these people thinking of me now? And I mean, being able to let go of that fear of what people think and fear of like mortality, like, oh, this is all going to end someday and I'm going to be dead. And, if you can come to grips with that and you can just embrace like the brevity of life, like, yeah, this is going to go by quick, and just know that, like memento mori, which is, you will die someday, is sort of something that I live by. It's like, um, it really helps me be present in the exact moment, because the past is gone, future's undetermined. The only thing that you have is to be present with it. So, I use journaling, and part of that journaling is I weave in, how to let go of the fear or let go of my hesitancy to do something. And then I wrap up my journaling with gratitude, like, what are the things that I'm truly grateful, for in my life? And then the end is just an affirmation of like, what is it that I want to draw to me, and what are the things that I want to release, um, lovingly release. And so I would say, if you're an entrepreneur and the grind is like, kicking you in the ass, and you don't know if you can do it, A, find a network, B, find a good journal and write that stuff down and have a plan. Like, the biggest thing is like, if you don't have a plan and you don't have a contingency plan on top of that plan, then I mean, you have no navigation system. And you can end up in a drift. And I think that I find like a lot of budding entrepreneurs run into that. But if you're really truly an entrepreneur, you're going to screw it up. You're going to screw it up. You're going to fail, and fail fast, and then pivot. But the main thing is just continue your journey, and allow that journey to take shape in any way that it can, but guide that journey through through planning.
That's a mic drop. Like that's a total mic drop right there.
Boom! I'm out like
Boom.
a yolk.
Oh my gosh, you are. It's like so. This is the stuff I talk about all the time. Thank
Oh,
you
good.
so
Oh,
much.
you're welcome.
I journal every morning. I have
Yeah.
what I call my CSO, my chief spiritual officer,
Uh,
and I write to my CSO every morning on
oh.
what I'm grateful for, the
Mm-hmm.
things I need, and the release, like the letting go of stuff.
Oh.
You know, I did the Landmark Forum with my wife
Oh.
over 20 years ago, and my biggest takeaway was all you have is this moment. And
Right.
if it ain't the best moment going, like what are
Yeah.
you doing? Because
You
there is,
change it.
yeah, like there's no future, there's
That's
no
so
past.
interesting that you guys went through Landmark, because I actually, when I was 18, went through EST, which became Landmark, and Werner Erhard. This is way back in the day, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
Werner Erhard actually spoke at the EST session that I went to when I was 18, and it completely scared the crap out of me, because this guy had such a presence, and you know how he is. Well, I mean, if you were in Landmark, I think Landmark is a little more toned down version, but like he basically walked in and said, "You guys are a bunch of assholes." And it's like, what? Wait, what? Who is this guy? Who does he think he is? And it completely disrupted like my thought patterns and who I thought I was. And then they take you until like 2 or 3 in the morning. And I remember driving back from Denver, after the last day, which I think was either a Sunday or a Monday. And I'm like, I don't know, this seems like a bunch of BS to me. And it was the sun was just starting to actually come up, and it was illuminating the Rocky Mountains. And I just stopped at the top of the hill, got out of my car, and just started to cry. I was like, this is it. This is it. This is all I've got. So yeah, that's cool. I acknowledge you for being part of Landmark.
Yeah, thank you. And I love what you said, because I've listened to Werner recently. I listened to some a talk of his where he talked about the drift
Yes.
and understanding the drift. If you can even understand the drift, I don't even know that I got it. I've listened to it 3 times, and I'm still kind of figuring out what is he trying to. But it's funny. There's an essence of me that understands it. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think I could actually put it into words to somebody of what
Yeah.
the drift is. But I knew when you said that, I knew exactly what you were talking about, of just being in that, that haze of thinking that you're driving the boat, but really you're
Yeah. No.
you know
The boat
and
is happening to you.
yeah. So how do you get yourself to be present enough that you are driving the boat and you're not just lost in a drift, right?
Yeah, that is where the work comes in. And I mean, the work of journaling, the work of meditation, the work of, of being present, and the work of growing, growth and awareness. And so that's where you need to put the work in, from my perspective, at least.
Yeah. I wonder if you'd be okay. I want to take you back to the Luxor Hotel, because in your book, Guy Gone
Yes.
Keto,
Uh-huh.
that for me was a great moment. Just first of all, I just want to acknowledge you for your vulnerability. It's not easy to share our darkest moments in the world, and to let people know when we come to that realization and think,
Mhm.
this is really what I think about myself in this moment. This is who I
Oh,
was,
yeah.
and I'm not proud of it. And I've had those moments for myself. I had one very recently. I went to Unity Village in Missouri and had a real awesome moment that my wife, when I came home, said, for the last 2 weeks, you've been pretty much a jerk. And it's like, well,
Oh.
if you would have found out about yourself what I found out. So like what transpired from that? You have this epiphany that you're not pleased with your life and what's going on. You've got this
Right.
company that, and I guess where I'm going with this is lining up your values with what
Mhm.
you're actually doing in your life. And
Oh,
it's kind of, to me, like there was the one thing that you were doing, which was your business, which had some
mhm,
principles and some ways
mhm,
of being, and then
mhm.
there was what you were actually doing, and the two weren't aligned.
Right.
And
Right. And that's walking your talk. And yeah, um I would like to consider that moment in the Luxor to be my version of bottoming out. And um, it's easy to get caught up in one's own, BS, like, self-importance and, an ego. And um Yeah, I mean, I really, in that moment, I, uh, I felt that I wasn't being truly authentic to who I was. And I really felt like a bit of an imposter, because I was working in the health and wellness industry, and a lot of my customers were, in the keto category. And I had used keto in the past, but I used it as a diet. So, I'd put on extra 20 pounds and then go keto, and in a couple months, the 20 pounds is gone. But then I'd go off keto and have my bad lifestyle again. And what happens is, you get yo-yo weight, but your yo-yo weight continues to go up and up and up and up. So, I mean, I was carrying an extra 35 pounds, which, by some people's standards is not a lot. For me, it was, considering the industry that I was in. And I think that, that the stars aligned, and it was just that perfect moment, where I went out to dinner with one of our vendors, and, had a steak and potato and wine and cake, and got back up to the room. And um, that's where the proverbial crap hit the fan, because I walked in there and it just smelled like old booze, and like this bad shag carpet, and there was the jacuzzi in the middle of the room. And I would say that the room probably smelled like broken dreams and regrets from my perspective. And at that point, I just looked in the mirror and I'm like, oh, you know what? I don't like what I see, and I don't like who's looking back at me. And that's when I really used journaling to leverage the pain of my bad habits, and associating pain with eating the cake and drinking the wine, and, and not staying fit and not being true to who I was. And so the pain of that exceeded the pleasure that I was getting out of those bad habits, was just pretty amazing. And I think that is what I robbed that from Anthony Robbins, because I've been a huge Anthony Robbins follower my entire adult life. And, when he says associate pain with your bad habits, um, I mean, I just gravitated to that. And so I associated all of that pain and started writing it down. And eventually I found that the things that I was using to reward myself or to self-medicate, particularly with food, that those started to fade away. I started to recognize those as not pleasure, but a way for me to avoid pain. And, when you amp up the pain of those bad habits, then there's no pleasure in them, and they cease to be bad habits. And so I would say that was sort of the genesis of all of this. And I still use that today. Like if I see myself, expressing a lot of ego, it's easy for me to associate the pain with ego, because I mean, for me, ego is just a way that people express their low self-worth and their insecurities, by saying, oh, this is who I am and I'm great, when inside they're like, hey, I'm not so great, I need to bolster this with some bragging. So, you see that a lot in the world, but I don't want to be part of that. So I still use that method quite a bit of associating pain with bad habits, and, setting the pleasure. Yeah.
So I'm curious, what does that what does that look like? Is it really that you're just thinking about the suffering that you're having as a result of doing this, or like let's say, hey, if when I eat dessert, this is what it happens, and so you mentally image that. I just want for listeners out there to understand a little more of the process because they might not be familiar with it.
Right. I write it down.
Okay.
So that's my method, because if I think about something, I mean, I have a certain level of ADD. So if I get a thought in my head, it's gone within 30 seconds. So if I'm using uh, some sort of a pain method of correcting a bad habit, um, if I just think about it, like, oh, I'm gonna eat this donut and I'm gonna feel like crap later, that doesn't really work for me too much. I mean, I need to really drill down into deep detail of what will happen, and that's more effective if I use it, with pen and paper. Like, look, I'm going to eat this donut and it's going to give me this amount of pleasure for this amount of time, but the pain part of it, what it's going to bring into my life is, is self-loathing. Like, I'm not being my best self. And so what does that translate into? And then what's the butterfly effect of that? Like, if you feel crappy about yourself, how are you going to help other people feel better about themselves when you don't feel so great yourself? So I think that, I've had a lot of people on social media, tell me, hey, you need help because that's sort of self-punishment and suffering. And I'm like, well, I mean, is it really? I mean, you're breaking a bad habit and you're really associating pain with something that isn't bringing good into your life. Um, I don't know. I mean, I don't judge other people for saying that's not their method. I get it. It's sort of my method. And yeah, and I write it down, and sometimes, the things that come up for me are pretty negative about myself, like, why did you do this and what can you do to be better? But in the end, you always seal it up with an affirmation of like, I accept myself exactly the way I am, I love myself, and this is part of my journey. So that's the
Right.
long story.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it. That's uh yeah, one of my things I'm doing right now is I'm actually on the road to becoming a unity minister,
Oh,
to be ordained, and I don't even know what I want to do with it. Like, it's
yeah.
not like I'm like, oh, I want to go lead a congregation. I don't know
Mhm.
that that's what I want to do. I want to do the
Right.
work.
Yeah.
That's what excites me about it. And, so one of the tools that we actually use
Mhm.
at Unity is denials and affirmations,
Oh, yeah,
right? Like,
definitely.
and so I totally relate to, it's not that, when you say you're writing it down, you're not
Mhm.
dragging yourself through the mud.
Right.
You're recognizing what the cost is. If I
Mhm.
do this, here's what I'll get in the short term.
Mhm.
I get some pleasure, da 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 da, and then
Mhm.
here's what I get in the long term, which is
Right.
not really what I want to do. So I don't want to be that. So I'm not that. This is what I am instead. And you build yourself. So once you recognize, then you can build back the this is who I am part, and you leave on the I am this,
Yeah.
and move forward with that versus moving forward with the drudgery, right? So I totally get it.
100%. Yeah. And I mean, you have a finance background, so you understand return on investment. And so, I mean, everything can be translated into a return on investment because, like, when you look at the exchange of money, all that is the exchange of energy or the exchange of value. And so, you can look at anything in your life as a return on investment. Like, I'm going to spend time, developing this relationship with this person. What is the return on an investment? And I mean, maybe that's a selfish way of looking at it, but we are the sum of the five people closest to us. So when you look to invest in friendships or partnerships or any type of relationship, look at that, do a cost benefit analysis on it. Like, here's what I'm putting into it and what am I going to be getting back? Like, am I putting myself into a situation where I'm a caretaker, or am I putting myself into a situation where this person is going to make a contribution to my life and I will make a contribution to their life, and you have something that is more unilateral.
Right.
um
Yeah, and
so
it's not good or bad, right? It's
right.
just
Oh, yeah.
it's just knowing. It's like,
Mhm.
if you know, then you know what you signed up for, so to speak, right? And if
Yeah,
it
100%. I mean, and that just goes back to, is there really good and bad? I mean, there's definitely evil in the world, but if you get yourself into a situation, that isn't ideal, I mean, and it's a bad situation, it doesn't make you a bad person. Or if you make bad decisions, it doesn't make you a bad person. And I think that if people can wrap their heads around that and realize that, is there really good and bad? I mean, there just is, and it's what you make out of that situation, after it's happened.
yeah. Yeah, that's why I love what you shared also about the releasing. And one of the things I do is forgiveness. Like, I'm a
Oh,
you know
huge.
like I mean, I bless my wife every day for hanging out with me. Like, just that, like, what do what she puts up with on my, we should do this now, like that
Yeah,
kind of craziness, right? So
yeah.
uh one of the things I wanted to touch
Mhm,
on also was,
mhm.
like, I love that you have farms and chickens at your place of business. So, I'm really big on values, and
Mm.
what I mean by that is, like, I will even talk to my clients about where you invest your money. Like, your biggest vote that you have in this world is voting with your dollars.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yes, go to the polls.
Hmm.
Absolutely. I'm an advocate for that. But really,
Hmm.
where you put your money is telling companies that you either align with what they're doing in the world,
Hmm.
or if you don't put your money there, you don't align with what you're doing in your world. And so I
Sure.
was very curious about how you treat your employees, what you have going on at work, where that kind of started. Like, what was the impetus for having chickens and farms and things like that?
Well, I grew up that way. So we had chickens and we, always had a garden. So a farm is a little bit of an exaggeration. I would say it's more of a garden. And so we moved from one facility to another. We left the chickens behind for the new owner of the building because they were a lot of work. And I guess I didn't realize how dirty chickens were. And I'm not sure it was 100% great idea to actually have chickens adjacent to a food facility. Um, so we pivoted on that, but we do have like bees. So now I've like become a beekeeper, and I'm utterly fascinated with the bees, and it's a sick obsession actually, and I can sit and stare at those bees for hours because they are on purpose. They have no ego. They are there to serve the queen and to serve the hive, and they work in absolute harmony, and they're so important to the world too. It's like if we don't have bees, then our existence literally will start to implode on itself, because they're the great pollinators. They're the reason that we get fruit and grains and vegetables, and so I mean that's been my latest thing, and I would say that it is a million times more enriching than the chickens, because I felt that the chickens were savages, like the way that they treated each other. And it's like, hey, this isn't a healthy community. So I migrated from an unhealthy community to a healthy community that works symbiotically together. And those would be the bees. And then I also put up bat houses because, I wanted something to be able to control the insect population around here without the city coming in and spraying, because we're right across um, the parking lot from a wetland, and there's tons of amphibians in there, and that's another thing that I can't stop looking at. Like, these are frogs. I love frogs. And yeah, I would say that I have some idiosyncrasies that boggle the mind sometimes.
Do your employees with you, along with you, interact with the bees, or do they just garden? Like, how does that work? Like, because it sounded like in the parts I read in the book that there's
Mhm.
like a garden and people can go pick vegetables and eat from there
Yep.
what they want. Is that accurate?
Oh yeah, definitely. This year we didn't do the garden. I mean, we have a herb garden, but we didn't like really build on the garden because we got so busy. But yeah, everybody here participates in the bees as much as a person can participate in the bees. I think it's just something that you observe. But yeah, it's awesome when I see one of my people out there just mesmerized by what's going on with those bees. Like, they're super gentle. They don't attack. They don't really swarm. And yeah, so it built community, but which is important. I think in our workplace, we do a lot of things. Like, I like to think of this business as a big family. So we're all protective of each other. We all watch each other's backs. Everybody knows every single person here. We have once a month luncheons and profit sharing and 401k and insurance. And I we pay an above market average salaries and hourly wages to people. So, um, I mean, I feel good about that, and we have people that really want to come to work here. So
Hmm.
that's and the people that are here take ownership in the company, and so for me, that's hugely satisfying, and it builds the work community. And I think anywhere, any place you can build any type of community, it's got a positive impact.
Yeah. You gave me a great segue to talk about something that I absolutely love with all of my heart and have for many years,
Mhm.
and that's the rock band Rush. And so the family concept to me, like for me, they have like when they finally finished touring, they still had the same guy running their lights that was their
Man,
tour manager when they were their very first tour. Like
wow.
that's yeah, and the truck driver, the very first truck driver they had,
Yeah.
he was the lead truck driver on their 40th anniversary tour. Like they have over the years always kept their key pieces together and looked after
Wow.
them like they were a family, because
Yeah.
that's, to them, that's what they were doing in the world. They were going out, spreading their
Yeah.
message, and they needed a family to stick together and treat
Wow.
everybody at a certain level. So I'm all for that kind of mandate around building a business. If you can build a business where everybody feels like they've got skin in the game and they're
Mhm.
part of it and they want to be
Oh, yeah.
there, then you're all working together, right? And
Right.
and you're gonna have squabbles. You're gonna have you're gonna have moments where you don't all see eye to eye like a
Yeah.
family does.
Yep.
But having the willingness to work through that
Oh,
is
yeah.
also is also key to that.
Yeah, and I think that that ability to be able to work through situations like that just creates growth, like personal growth, but also creates stability. Like there's times when I've got some of my colleagues where they're not getting along. And, are they fighting like cats and dogs? No, mostly just like cats.
Yeah.
But and I could intervene, but I don't, because I want to see those things run their course. And I want to see patience. I want to see forgiveness. I want to see acceptance. And ultimately what you see in it is growth. And when you see people grow, that are part of something that you built, it's amazingly satisfying.
Mm. So the guy gone keto, I want to talk a little bit about that, because you said it's not really the moneymaker and stuff, but I loved it. Here's what I love: the packaging.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Like that to me was like, really, like, I've never held a product that is either ketchup or barbecue sauce, something of that nature, that
Yeah.
felt like this in terms of packaging. So I love
Yeah.
that. I love the product
Yeah.
as
Thank you.
well. I've used it. And so where, what's the goal for that, if there is one? And where do you
Um,
want to take that?
I want to still expand the brand quite a bit. So that, I would like to say that that brand was well thought out, and everything was sort of planned, but it's not at all what happened. I mean, it happened very organically. So the book wasn't even a book, it was my journal. And I had some friends that had some connections with publishing companies, and I said, hey, I've got this journal of ideas that I had, and I think that it might make a decent book because it's about a journey that I went on. And so the publishers really liked it quite a bit, and I would say within a year the book was out. And it didn't take a ton of editing. um, but part of that too was, I couldn't have ketchup. Like ketchup has got more sugar in it than ice cream. And so when people, think about, oh, I'm going to have some French fries and dip them in ketchup, or when you think you're going to have a hamburger, it's like basically you're putting a scoop of ice cream on the top of it. Or barbecue sauce. Like barbecue sauce has the same amount of sugar, and sometimes even more than ketchup. So I couldn't have any of these things. I couldn't have teriyaki sauce. So my life was pretty void with those. But I mean, at my job, I'm a food scientist. So I just got in the lab and I knocked out these recipes for myself. And then I shared them with people. It's like, hey, you want to try this barbecue sauce? And everybody's like, oh, you should totally sell this. And which I always tell people that too. Oh, you should sell this. It's a really good product. But I'm like, yeah, you know what? That's a good idea. And so, we just worked with our graphic artist to create packaging and found a unique packaging system that works for the product. And then we launched the product, and it was like hugely popular right from the beginning. People had it and they were like, this is unbelievable. I can't believe this doesn't have any sugar in it. And it keeps me in keto. So that it just grew organically from there. Like we haven't really promoted it. We haven't done really any advertising. We've done some events, but all of it has been word of mouth. And so where am I going to take this in the future? Um, it is my side hustle, and I don't have a ton of time. Most of the like fulfillment and stuff like that is third party, but I can't stop creating. So every time I get into the lab, I'm like, oh, I should make this, I should make that. So I do plan on adding probably at least 6 to 8 SKUs next year to expand it out. And part of it is going to be chips, like chocolate chips, white chocolate chips, matcha flavored chips, like drink, like hydration system, like drops you can put in water that increase your electrolytes that don't have sugar, bake mixes, syrups. I mean, there's a whole line of stuff that I just can't stop creating. So we'll keep launching that. Where the brand will go in the future, it's in a really popular category, and I feel like if I can start putting uh, more time into it, I mean, it'll easily be $100 million brand in the next couple of years.
Hmm.
Great.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds, that sounds amazing. So maybe, before we end this call, you talk about, okay, $100 million brand.
Mhm.
At some point, uh, when do you think you turn your attention more to that? Because it sounds, in order to get it there, it's going to start requiring some kind of energy besides
Right.
just the organic, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, as you know, because we're making some shifts actually in the packaging, and we're adding SKUs to it. So the brand is shifting. And I think that once I feel confident in what we have, to offer people, and we're scalable, because like right now we're not 100% scalable. um, we're scalable to a point, but if Walmart or something came along, it would be a struggle for us. Um, so I think probably in 2020, I'm going to be able to get my vision locked in of how I want to grow that business. But I'm fully confident, based on the category that it's in, that it will. I mean, I can easily build this to $100 million brand, and then sell it to maybe Kraft, or one of the bigger players, in the CPG world. But I already know what I want to do after that. So I actually have all these things stacked up, and my ultimate goal, probably by 2023 or 2024, is to launch a company called Bacteriologics. And Bacteriologics is going to use a program called CRISPR, that can do gene modification through Cas9 protein. And my goal is to genetically modify bacteriophage, which lives in our body. They're sort of benevolent viruses that live in our body. Think of them as the Dexters of viruses. Like, they attack and prey on other viruses. But I did find a system that we can use to genetically modify these bacteriophage to potentially attack cancer cells, and to ultimately replace antibiotics. That is my moonshot goal. So 2023, 2024, I'll probably take all of the money that I've made from my businesses and pour it into this particular project.
Wow. I mean, that sounds amazing. And, I love that you just see yourself as a creator, because I kind of believe we're all creators.
Yeah,
We just need to do some work to find what that space
100%.
is that we want to create on. Did all of this stuff, does all of this stuff a lot come from your journaling? Is that where these downloads come? Because I know, for me, I will
Yeah,
speak for me, in
yeah,
the morning I have a
yeah.
routine. Part of
Hmm.
that is opening up myself. I meditate every
Hmm.
day, and
Mm.
it's allowing, the divine infinite mind that's out
Hmm.
there, the ideas that are floating, to be able to
Yeah.
come in, and me to grab onto them, and
Yes.
write them down and go, here's where, I want to go. Is that
Mhm.
similar for you?
Yeah, 100%. So I mean, like, I do, like, every December 31st, I will redo goals for the following year. And then I revisit those goals quarterly, to make sure that I'm keeping up with the action plan that's associated with them. But yeah, keeping the flame going, if you will, really comes from journaling. So when I wake up in the morning, take some deep breaths, clear my head, really connect with, I guess you could say, the universal power. I really connect and become a channel for that, and then just to pour it onto the page. And then when I'm pouring it onto the page, I always reference it as it already happening. Meaning, I've sold my business for $100 million, and I used that money to create, or to launch Bacteriologics, and we treated our first patient in 2024 with great success. Yeah, so so it's always like, as it already happened. And yeah, daily, a section of my journal is all about, my goals, my aspirations, and my moonshots.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. It is already given.
It is.
Yeah.
The
Uh,
body just needs to catch up.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. Tom, we could go on. I could talk to you for, I think we could jam on ideas for like hours.
Oh,
However,
completely.
however, I also know we both have, things to look after in the business
Sure.
world. So
Sure.
I'm going to thank you so much for your time today. I would love to pick this up again and have another
Oh,
conversation with you down the
definitely.
road. I
I
so
love
enjoyed
that.
speaking with you, and I think we have a lot of similar ideas on how to assist people in finding something that they can do in the world and just jumping off and going after it. So thanks for your time. If you're ever in the Vancouver area up here in Canada, let me know. And when we are traveling through the Oregon area, I will let you know. I would love to, spend even 5 minutes and say hi and just see your facility and your bees and stuff.
Oh, that'd be perfect.
That'd be
I would be hurt if you didn't.
Okay. Awesome. You have a fantastic day. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
A huge thanks to today's guest and to you for being a part of the show. Now, if any of the ideas or stories did strike a chord with you, then I'd be honored if you would just take a quick moment to do a couple of things. One, if something in particular did resonate with you and you feel like it would make a difference in the lives of others, then please go ahead and share this through your social media channels. We'd like that very much. And two, if you are feeling compelled to join in on our ever-growing Bloom Living conversation, then hit the subscribe button and we'll show up every time there is a new episode available. It's not only my goal, but it's the goal of our entire Bloom Living team and community to be the very change that we want to see in the world. All ideas begin with a conversation, first with yourself and then with others. So we welcome your voice and we ask that you send along any comments, thoughts, or questions. This is Thomas DeSchutter, Bloom Living.
I don't wanna turn your stomach fast. I don't wanna get all mired in dry cinnamon. But I think I found me a pocket here. There's pipe bombs floating on my television. My mailbox of bankers warning. Down my street, a drive-by shooting.